Hello everyone, and welcome to the Apps for Good App Inventor tutorials. This tutorial is covering the basics of App Inventor and creating your first app. In this tutorial, we're going to be covering the designer window and the blocks editor. The best way of really getting your heads around this is by actually creating an app, so we'll also be doing that. Before you do this tutorial, you might want to have a look at the Getting Started tutorial or have a read up about App Inventor and setting up. The first thing we want to do is create a new project, so let's do that. Click the New button on the top left hand side of the screen and let's type in a project name. We're going to call our project Hello Kitty. That might not make much sense right now, but hopefully it will once you finish this tutorial. So select OK and let's get started. What you're looking at right now is the designer window. This is where you create the user interface for your app. You'll notice in the middle of the designer window is a screen. Well, this is what the user sees when they're using your app. The designer window is broken up into a couple of subsections. You'll notice that in the middle of the screen is the viewer section. This shows you as the developer what the actual app user will be seeing when they're using your app. So at the moment it's just an empty blank screen. To the left hand side of the viewer you'll see the palette section. The palette section shows you all of the different tools that you can use to build your app. In fact, why don't we go ahead and use one of them. If you click on the button one, which is under basic, and you drag that onto the viewer and you let go, you'll notice that it appears. Not only does it appear on the screen, but it also appears on the components section to the right hand side of the viewer. So you'll see originally the component section just said screen 1, but now it also says button 1. The component section actually displays every single component that your app is currently using. When you select one of those components, for example screen 1, the property section on the far right hand side changes to display the different properties that that particular component has. So screen 1 for example has a background color component, a background image, icon and so forth. Let's just quickly play around with the property section for screen 1. Let's click on background color and let's change it to black. You'll now notice that the viewer section, which displays the screen that our user will be looking at, the background color is changed to black. Now let's go ahead and change that back to white again. You might be wondering what app we're actually going to be making here. The app we're going to be making is a basic version of a soundboard app. A soundboard app, the way a soundboard app works is that you click on certain images or buttons and then certain sounds are played, and they're quite popular and you probably use a few of them yourselves. So since we've got a button on the screen, let's go ahead and use that for our soundboard app. The first thing we want to do is change the look of that button because it's not very appealing from our user's point of view. So let's click on the component, the button 1 component, and let's go down to the image property under the property section and let's click on that. You'll notice that a subsection appears and it says add, cancel or OK. This basically allows us to add images to our button. So let's click on add, choose file and locate an image from our computer that we want to use. So I've got a picture of a cat here and it's in my assets folder. The assets folder you can also find on our site and you can download all the assets that we use in our tutorials from there. So now what should happen is the cat image should appear. Perfect. So we've now got a cat image as our button. Unfortunately our button still says text for button 1, which isn't great. So why don't we change that to pet me. So to do that, what I did was I went to the text property under properties and I changed it to pet me. And now if we look at a button, it says pet me right in the middle. Unfortunately, you can't really see that either because it's the same color as the cat. So there's two things we could do. We could change the color of the text to white, and that will be changing the text property color. Or we could try something slightly different. So let's click on text alignment and let's change it from center to left, and let's see what happens. Right, so it's shifted the text to the left hand side of the button, and you can see it now. So that's basically good enough. So we've got a button on the screen, we've got a picture of a cat, and the button says pet me. So the first thing someone's going to do is they're going to probably try and pet the cat, and in doing so they're going to press the button. What we want to then happen is for a sound to play. For that to happen, we need to add a sound component. So if we go to the palette section and we look here under basic, you'll notice that there's nothing to do with sound here. You'll also notice that under palette, as well as having basic, you've also got media, animation, social, sensors, screen and arrangement, and so forth. What we want is something to do with sound, really. So if we look under media, you'll notice we have a sound component. So if we click on that and drag it onto the viewer, just like we did for the button, you'll notice that once I've let go of it, it appears in the components under screen 1, just like button 1 did. You'll also notice that it didn't appear on the screen. If I scroll down a little bit, you'll notice that it appeared in a separate area called the non-visible components. The reason it did this was because you can't actually see sound. Well, you don't see sound, it's pretty obvious. So the non-visible components shows you things that are usable within your app, but the user can't actually see. So we've got our button and we've got a sound. Well, we've got the sound component, but there's nothing actually associated with that sound. What we want to do is we want to play a specific sound. We want to play a cat meowing when you press the button. So if we click on the sound 1 component and we go to its properties, we'll see a source property. This basically means where you're getting the sound from. So if we click it just like we did with the image for the button, and we click on add, choose file, locate a sound file. We've got a cat meow one here. If I click OK and load that in, we have now got a cat sound associated with the sound 1 component. So we've got a button and we've got a sound component. If I scroll down, you can see that the sound component is the non-visible component. One other section that we haven't really spoken about, apart from the palette section, the view one, the component one, the property one, is the media one. The media, this media section actually shows us all the elements that we've brought into this app that didn't really originally exist and aren't part of App Inventor. So the actual image of the cat and the sound clip, we've added that in separately. This would mean if we wanted to put another image on the screen or another button or another sound clip, and we wanted to use that existing media, we wouldn't have to re-browse our computer for that. It would be stored in the media section. So if I click source right here for the sound clip, you'll notice that I don't need to click add. You can see it here, and this section here is basically pulling all the information from the media. So you've also got cat 1, but we've left this, since it's a sound clip, as cat meow. So our user interface is actually complete. We've got the button, we've got the sound. If we were to run this on an Android phone right now, unfortunately it wouldn't do anything. People would press their button and no sound would play. The reason for this is because the sound and the button aren't actually linked. To do things like that, it's a bit more complicated. Not that hard though, so don't worry. and you can't do that from the design point of view. It's a bit more, it's the coding side of it, or in this case, in App Inventor's case, the blocks editor part. So why don't we open the blocks editor. If you haven't already done so, click the blocks editor open button here on the top right. My one's already open, so I'll just switch to that now. So what we're looking at right now is the blocks editor. At the moment, there's nothing on the screen. That's because we haven't actually programmed anything. We haven't done any of the technical aspects of it. It's just we've just been working on the design side. Usually when you're creating a mobile app and you're doing it in Android or Java or Android, you have to write lots of code. Luckily for us, we don't have to do that with App Inventor. We use blocks. On the left hand side, you can see 3 tabs: built-in, my blocks, and advanced. Right now we're only really going to be looking at my blocks. So built-in are the ones that App Inventor uses. We'll probably cover those in a later tutorial, as well as advanced as well. For now, what I'd like you to do is just click on my blocks. So once you've clicked my blocks, you'll notice that you can see a couple of buttons on the left hand side of the screen. You have my definitions, button 1, screen 1, and sound 1. So apart from the my definitions block, the my definitions button, everything after that pretty much it refers to the components that you've added to your screen. So for example, we added a button and we added the sound, and screen 1 was already there, and that in itself is also a component that we can use. When we click on one of these buttons that refers to our components, we get blocks that appear, and these blocks allow us to manipulate that particular component and use some of its special features. So a button, for example, has special features such as clicking, got focus, long click, and lost focus. I wouldn't worry too much at this point whether you understand all of these. For now, we're only really going to be looking at clicking on a button. So you'll also notice underneath these methods, we also have some properties that we can refer to as well. So we've got like the background color and height and so forth. So this app is a soundboard app, and what we want is for when a user clicks the button for a sound to play. So clicking a button is a form of an action, and these blocks here, the ones that look a little bit like staplers, you can think of them as actions. And so button 1 click is an action that we'd like to perform. So if I drag that out and place that onto the screen, this in itself is a representation of what will happen when a user clicks a button. At the moment, you can see it's completely empty. There's nothing happening in between this. So if a user clicks it, nothing happens. What we want to do is change that. We want to put something in the middle of this so that when a user clicks the button, some sort of action will occur. When someone clicks a button, we want a sound to play. And if we look at the sound block, we'll see, by clicking that, we'll see certain actions that we can perform. So there's sound 1, pause, play, resume, stop, and so forth. What we want is, we want a sound 1 to play. So if we drag that call onto this block, it should snap into place. Brilliant. So this actually just shows us that when we click the button, sound 1 will play. And that is actually all we need to do for the coding aspect of this this particular tutorial. So why don't we test this out by clicking on a new emulator. So Emulator is a way of creating almost like a fake phone on your computer, and everything that you do will automatically appear on this phone, and you can test it out. So if we just OK this screen, wait a few seconds and it should load up. It might take a while, so you have to be patient. Once the emulator has appeared on the screen, click this drop down menu and connect it to the device. If you're wondering why my emulator appeared so quickly, it's because I paused the recording of this video. So if you're still waiting, feel free to pause the video that you're watching until yours your emulator appears on screen. Once you've connected the device to the emulator, your app should automatically load up. So now all we have to do is test the app. So if I click on the kitten, it should play the sound. Perfect. So it looks like everything's working. So that pretty much concludes our tutorial. We covered the design window, the blocks editor, and we also created our first simple app, a soundboard app. So now that you've completed this tutorial, you can try and do something a little bit different. Maybe try and change the image to something else, and change the sound as well, to play a different kind of sound. Maybe try adding in another button as well and see how that works out for you. Let me know how you go, and if you enjoyed this tutorial, feel free to subscribe to our channel and leave a comment.